Are you like me and you found yourself wondering, is it worth spending the money, taking a trip to Washington, D.C.? What's there really to see? What is there to do? Is it worthwhile? Stay to the very end. Watch what we did, what we saw, what we ate, how much we spent, and you decide for yourself. First step, we booked DC in a Day bus tour.
Behind me is the Capitol building. As we're learning a little bit of history about the Capitol building, something I thought that was really interesting was the fact that the dome-shaped building in the middle was not part of the original plans. The original plans just had two buildings on each side, and it was shaped more like a barbell.
Starting from the Capitol building, we had an amazing view of the Washington Monument all the way across the National Mall. It's a huge grassy area between the Lincoln Memorial and the U.S. Capitol. It takes about 45 minutes to walk it, and it's about 2 miles long. Thankfully, we didn't have to do that because the bus was able to drop us off at specific spots. Next stop, the White House.
So here we are standing in front of the White House.
Yes, it's actually smaller than I imagined, but still very cool.
We won't be able to get inside the White House today because in order to get in, you have to ask nicely, and we didn't. Just kidding. In order to see a real tour of the White House, you would have to write a letter to your congressman about 3 or 4 months in advance, and they would do a whole background check, and we didn't think Owen would pass it, so we didn't. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
She tripping, y'all. We just didn't do it ahead of time.
We just didn't do it. We didn't plan. I wish we had because it would have been really nice, but we planned this trip last minute, and so here we are. At least we can stand outside the White House and be able to see it from here.
Very cool.
The Eisenhower Executive Office Building was originally built for the State, War, and Navy departments between 1871 and 1888. Now it houses a majority of offices for the White House staff. This is the world's tallest, predominantly stone structure. The Washington Monument was built to commemorate the first president of the U.S., George Washington.
We're at the Washington Monument. This is a very cool structure.
If you look closely, you can see a difference in the shading of the marble, visible at about 150 feet. This is where construction was halted and later resumed with marble from a different source. The World War II Memorial honors the service of 16 million members of the armed forces and the support of millions more on the home front. Surrounding the impressive pool in the center are 56 granite pillars, each representing a U.S. state or territory at that time.
We're here at the Martin Luther King Monument, and I want you to notice these 2 huge boulders, and you'll find the monument of Martin Luther King. You'll notice that it fits directly between the 2 boulders. So the 2 boulders are supposed to represent the mountain of despair, and he is coming out. This is a representation of a stone of hope. And you'll notice his legs where it's almost as if it's not complete, and that's because it represents the end of his life, and also that the civil rights movement still is unfinished.
Everyone comes to this man-made reservoir known as the Tidal Basin, especially during the time of cherry blossoms. It takes 1 to 2 hours to walk around it. Be sure to take time to read and reflect on the quotes by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that are engraved throughout the memorial. Now this one brought me to tears. The Vietnam War Memorial honors men and women who served in the controversial Vietnam War. There are over 58,000 names of Americans who gave their lives in service to their country. Vietnam Women's Memorial is a place where people leave hair elastics and hair scrunchies, which are a tribute to the women who served in the war as nurses and physicians. This reminds visitors that women served in times of war. The Three Soldiers, or the Three Servicemen statue, is a bronze statue by Frederick Hart. It was unveiled November 1984. This is actually the first representation of an African American on the National Mall.
We're here at the Lincoln Memorial. In 1963, Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech here. An interesting fact is that 40% of the Lincoln Memorial is actually underground. So there are 19 statues here, and these 19 statues represent those that fought in the Korean War. There are men from the Army, men from the Marines, different parts that are represented here, and even one of the statues is representative of a Korean soldier. The U.S. and the South Koreans were fighting together in the Korean War. And this was to prevent South Korea from being overtaken and being made into a communist country. So these are actual photos that have been sandblasted into the wall, and they're arranged in a way to make it look like a mountainous region. So if you kind of look at it, you can see that it looks like a mountain, to represent as if they were going through the mountains in South Korea. But they're actual photos sandblasted into the wall.
The United States Marine Corps War Memorial represents this nation's gratitude to Marines and to those who have fought beside them. While this statue depicts one of the most famous incidents of the World War II, the memorial is dedicated to all Marines who've given their lives in defense of the United States since 1775. This flag raising was a symbolic moment that marked the American victory at Iwo Jima. Be sure to watch our video coming up on where to eat and where not to eat in Washington, D.C. This Potomac River cruise was included in our ticket for the D.C. in a Day tour. We really enjoyed ourselves for the tour overall. It's just that by the time we took this river cruise, we were a little exhausted. Here is a huge tip for you. If you could only visit 2 museums when you go to Washington, D.C., be sure they include the National Air and Space Museum and the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The Air and Space Museum has over 60,000 artifacts. They include aircraft, rockets, missiles, satellites, and space helmets. Learn all about what it was like to work in the aviation industry. Designed, built, and tested by Wilbur and Orville Wright, the Wright Flyer first flew on December 17, 1903. This was the first powered heavier-than-air machine to reach controlled, sustained flight with a pilot on board. Plan to spend at least 3 hours here so you don't feel rushed.
Oh my goodness.
Be sure to walk through the many gardens that surround the Smithsonian Museum. These are like museums without walls. Absolutely beautiful.
We are on the National Mall this beautiful day. A lot of people out. I think it's in the low 70s. And we just came back from the Air and Space Museum.
We had a great time.
Man, that place was nice. I literally, like, you can spend like a day, in there alone, just catching up, reading everything. It's so much information, so informative, and I wish we had more time to be in there. But we do have another appointment set for the African American Museum, and looking forward to that. But we just wanted to just take a little time here to walk on this National Mall. I'm going to spin the camera around so you guys can see how beautiful it is. You can see the Washington Monument right there. Beautiful structure. So many people out today, and just a beautiful day. See the Capitol down there. Yeah, this kind of reminds me of U of I, like the quad, or any, like, I guess all big schools have a quad, but just this center section here, and just people just walking around. It's beautiful.
The Smithsonian Institution is right across the street. There is a beautiful garden we just walked through. The African American History and Culture Museum is made of glass encased in metallic lattice panels, which is a reference to the ironwork created by enslaved African Americans in the South. You do have to get a timed entry ticket. Here's a tip for you. You can go online early morning and reserve a ticket as they open spots the same day. The National Museum of African American History and Culture is the world's largest museum dedicated to African American history and culture. It opened in 2016 and was the second most visited Smithsonian Museum in 2022. While the museum has more than 40,000 artifacts, only about 3,500 are on display. The building's facade is both modern and narrative. It's a monument to the work of the people who made this country possible, but whose work is hidden in plain sight. There are pieces that highlight the African American experience, such as this railway car. In the museum, you'll also find a cabin from the Edisto Island, South Carolina, that would hold between 8 and 16 people, or a stool from a Greensboro, North Carolina lunch counter that represents a resolve to move beyond segregation.
Wow, we just left the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and it was unbelievable.
Absolutely amazing.
I mean, you literally can spend like a week in there. It's so detailed, the history, the culture, unbelievable. They didn't spare any expense with that building.
No, there was so much to it. We thought that maybe 2 hours would be good, but we ended up being there from 1:30 till about 5:30, and we still needed more time.
Yeah, we were rushing, you know.
We were rushing through it. I feel like I need to come back to DC just to go back to this museum.
Now we want to hear from you. We were only in DC for 3 days, and we crammed a whole lot in those 3 days. Have you been to DC before? If so, what did you do? What did you see? And what's a must visit? Because we definitely plan to go back. In addition to our food review, be sure to watch our review of where we stayed, and we'll show you exactly how much we paid to stay there. We hope that this video has been helpful to you and that you benefited from it. If you enjoyed the video, please take this time now just to like, share, and subscribe to get notifications for our upcoming videos.